Awesome. Thanks, Matthew. Kia ora, everyone. I'll quickly start with an introduction. So, ko Claire George toko ingoa, ko mangawhau te maunga, ko owheo te awa, he kai whakahaere pūmanawa tangata ahu ki ihi Aotearoa, no te whanganui a tara aho. So, I am Claire George. I am the People and Culture Lead at Sport New Zealand. So, responsible for all things people related where we support the play, active rec and sport sector, which is awesome. Really love the work that I do, and it's mainly ties back to getting the best out of people. And a really key part of that is the conversations that you have that are sometimes not the easiest ones, but are really necessary and really important to getting the outcomes that we want. So first of all, I'm just going to check in that we're all on the same page with what a courageous conversation is. So a courageous conversation is where there's something that needs to be said and it feels a little bit scary or uncomfortable to say it. So the same principles apply whether that's a workplace performance conversation, whether it's you're coaching someone or you're in a team environment. It could just be friends and family. We always have things that we might need to bring up that feel a bit uncomfortable to do so. So the techniques and what we're talking about here is really valuable no matter whether you're talking in a work scenario, sports scenario, volunteering, committee, that sort of board governance scenario, or in your personal life as well. And so to get us started, I'm going to try and keep this relevant for everyone. So can I get you all to spend 2 minutes jotting down a live situation for you where you think you might need to have a courageous conversation? So just jot down what's the situation, what is it that you need to get across and say, and then hopefully what we cover in this webinar will be helpful in that situation. So I'll give you 2 minutes to do that.
Claire, we've just had somebody else admitted in, so maybe you want to highlight what you're doing at the moment.
Yes, thank you. So we are just jotting down a live situation of a impending courageous conversation. So where there's something that you need to say, maybe some feedback, maybe a reflection that you've had on something that's going on, but that piece of communication that you need to lead into that feels a bit scary and uncomfortable. And that's going to help us with what we cover afterwards. All right, so I'm hoping that's been enough time for people to get something down on paper. What we are going to cover today is we will understand why courageous conversations need to happen. We'll talk about the principles used in a model called radical candor. We'll talk about how to apply that radical candor model in conversations, whatever the conversation is. And then we'll also talk about some techniques for giving and receiving feedback. So then how do you do that well? So hopefully that is going to fit with the situation that you've talked about. And we'll start by talking about why we need to have courageous conversations. So I feel like if you're on the call, you already understand that there's something maybe that needs to be said, and also an understanding that it's kind of difficult. So courageous conversations promote both personal and professional growth. And this also goes 2 ways. So for the person who you are telling this information to, but also for yourself. We grow and we become better communicators, leaders, peers, friends, all of those things by being able to lean into these conversations. So they're really important. They build trust and better relationships as well. I always think a nice way to talk about a courageous conversation is if you had something stuck in your teeth, would you rather that people told you about it or left you there looking stupid, embarrassing yourself in front of everyone? And I'm pretty sure that most of you would say, I'd like someone to tell me, but I'd really like them to do it kindly, respectfully, not making me look stupid and laughing at me, but I want to know. And the same goes for things in the world of work and the world of sport. It's really important that we get those feedback from other people who might have a different perspective or might be able to see something that we can't, like the spinach in your teeth. Courageous conversations also help to improve performance and achieve better results. So again, we all have blind spots. There's always things that we might not know or see in our approach or the way we're doing things. And we need other people to help us out and tell us what that is. And if they can do that in a way that is sort of kind and caring, but also challenging, that's really helpful. So that's kind of the why. They're also really hard. And I'm sure you'll have some ideas in your own mind. And if you think of that situation that you've just jotted down, there's probably some reasons why you haven't had that conversation already. Often we don't want to upset people. We're really afraid of hurting people's feelings, or we don't want to start some conflict. We don't want them to come back and get defensive about what we've just said and then it escalate into a bit of an argument. Sometimes we're really nervous of emotional reactions as well. Will that person start crying if I say this? Are they going to get angry? Are they going to shout at me? If they shout at me, then will I cry and will I shout back? That's something that often stops us from engaging in the conversations that we need to. Sometimes we don't know if we've got the authority to have these conversations. Sometimes we go, well, is it my place to say that? And can talk ourselves out of that responsibility to take a lead and have a conversation. When my personal view is everyone should be able to have a courageous conversation when you've got something to say and contribute, and it should be valued. Sometimes we don't have the confidence or skills to know how to raise the issue. And so hopefully we'll talk through some things that will help with that. And then the other one, which is a bit of a big one, is sometimes we're not operating in an environment where providing feedback is normal or safe or the way that things are done. And it's something that we get out of practice, both giving and receiving feedback or hearing those other perspectives. So those are some of the things that can make it really hard. But we'll now talk about, well, how can we actually approach that? So I am going to use a model called radical candor to help us understand how we can sort of lean into these conversations. So candor is a word that I don't think we use that much in New Zealand. It's a bit American. This is an American style model. But it kind of, what it means is frankness. So it's that like upfront, saying the thing, be like, if you think of the word candid, so I'd say candidly to you, and then it's the truth that comes out, hopefully. That's where that word comes from. And so this model was developed by a woman called Kim Scott. She was a CEO, coach, and executive in Silicon Valley, or high-flying, fancy tech companies, worked at Google, that sort of thing. But she found that the hardest thing, no matter what environment you're in, is often giving and receiving the feedback that you need to. And in my world of people and culture, we can often, well, I think the best models can often be boiled down to a 2x2 diagram, which is quite easy to understand. So as you can see here, we've got the radical candor model. That can help us to kind of navigate how we're pitching our conversations and you'll see on the screen there's one arrow that's all about caring personally. So that's that, how do we bring that aroha, how do we bring the true and genuine care for the person you are having this conversation with into it, while also challenging directly. So that's the saying the thing that needs to be said. Sometimes it can be easier to understand what radical candor at its best looks like by first talking about what it isn't. So I'm going to start by some of the things that are not what good looks like that go into this model. So the first is obnoxious aggression. So that's some pretty heavy language to start with. That is what happens when you challenge someone directly. So you say the thing, but you don't have any love in behind it, and you don't have care for the person. You don't mind if they end up looking silly because of where or how you have told them this thing. Some people think of it as brutal honesty. Sometimes it gets called front stabbing. And sometimes people use it as a bit of a weapon as well. You might have some situations where you can think of a time where you've received feedback in this way, or seen a conversation happen in this way, and you'll probably know that it's how you can get action through fear or a negative relationship, but that's not where we do our best work and where we have our biggest breakthroughs. So I hope that it is obvious that obnoxious aggression is not really where we want to be when we're having our courageous conversations. The next one is manipulative insincerity. So that is praise that's kind of non-specific or not given as well. You let it slide. You tell people they're doing good when they're not really. It can be it's sort of the passive aggressive version of a courageous conversation. So you might say something nice on the surface, but actually what's happening is not okay, but you haven't gone and challenged the person on that. So you kind of don't care if they end up looking silly. And you're also not going to tell them, so nothing will change. So this often leads to a real lack of change where we might need to see it. The next box in there of what is not radical candor is ruinous empathy. And I think this is probably the most common one that I see people slip into. And so this is where you truly care so much about whoever it is that you need to have this conversation with, that you don't really say the thing that needs to be said. You might allude to it, but it's confusing and all intertwined with lots and lots of compliments or other things to make them feel better, that they don't actually get the feedback or that insight that they need to make the change that needs to happen from the conversation. So we often see this in environments where people really like each other, and where it's like harmony is valued in a team or an environment. And I guess this is if we go back to my spinach in the teeth example, this is where you don't tell them because you don't want them to feel bad. But by doing that, you've actually made it worse, and they haven't been able to change a really simple thing that would lead to them not embarrassing themselves. So hopefully those all make sense, and we can get into the good stuff now, which is radical candor. So when we're operating in this top right-hand corner, that's when we are working with radical candor. So it's when we avoid all of these things, and we manage to both care personally, bring that love, bring that care for people, and also say the thing, say it with love. So what might that actually sound like? It takes a lot of knowing the person that you are having this conversation with. So what are their goals? What are their motivators? What are their drivers? And finding a way to show that you know and understand that, and you are saying You are giving this feedback or this insight to them to help them with their goals, with what they want, with whatever it is they're trying to achieve. So it might be something like, we've been talking about how your goal is to take on a more senior role. Something that I've noticed that might help with that is taking a more professional approach to meetings so others can see you take the lead. Something like that rather than ruinous empathy, probably would have said nothing. Manipulative insincerity might have said, yeah, that meeting was good. Obnoxious aggression, that was crap. You embarrassed yourself. People, you don't look like someone that could take the lead when you do a meeting like that. And so it's that coupling the understanding of what motivates them, where they want to get to, and here's this piece of information that I have that's going to help you to get there. So what I would like you to do now is think back to the scenario that you jotted down at the beginning. And we'll all have a natural tendency somewhere in here. So you might be someone who's relatively comfortable challenging directly, but you need to remember to add some of that care personally lens to it. Or you might be the other way. You might be really good at caring personally, but you need to do a bit more of that challenge directly piece. So what I will get you to do now is for the scenario that you've jotted down, think about how might you challenge directly? What does that sound like? Where does that happen? And how can you also ensure that the person that you need to have this conversation with knows that you care about them personally? And like a little hint on this, that care's got to be real and genuine. People will know if it's not. And if you're in a situation where you can't find the care and the love for that person, maybe you are not the right person to be having this conversation. But I'll give you sort of 3 or 4 minutes to work through a few ideas on how you might increase the care personally and the challenge directly in this model. All right, that might be enough time there. Hopefully that has led to a few insights of your own with your live situation. And we'll talk a little bit more about some strategies and how do you really do that. Let me figure out my screens and all the bits and pieces I've got in the way. So how do we make sure we give ourselves a situation to use that radical candor methodology? So the first is preparation. Often with courageous conversations, we agonize over them for a little while. We know it's going to be hard, and so we stress about it a bit. But if we turn that stress into preparation, then that can chunk it down and make it feel a bit easier. So the things that I would recommend, one is that focus on the individual. As we just said, what is it that they need to know, but why would they want to know it? Why would they want to hear this from you? And bring that into the conversation that you're having. You've got to know people and what their why is to be able to dial up that care personally level. And that makes it safe and also creates the safety for them to hear that challenge directly space. So it might sound something like, I know that you want to improve your coaching effectiveness, and I've noticed something that might help. I know that that's a goal for you. Here's a thing that I've noticed. We haven't made it bigger than Ben-Hur, and we're just able to go into that conversation. Something like, I want to see you be successful in this role, and I'd like to talk about some things that might help. Where do you see the development opportunity for you? So if we can bring people into the conversation, some things they might know already, and then you can always say, could I add a suggestion? Asking for some of that permission to give some feedback changes the dynamic and changes how people can relate to it. Some of the feedback techniques that we know will help whatever it is we're saying to actually land. Being specific and clear. So that challenge directly, that is about the clarity of what you are saying. They need to leave that conversation not wondering if they need to be reading between the lines or what happened, what does this really mean? They need to hear, when you make jokes in that way, it actually makes people feel uncomfortable, and I know that that is not your intention. So just notice that it's not landing how you think it is, but I know that's not what you were trying to do. Something like that. It's what needs to be said. There's some clarity in there, but it's not in a, oh, you've really messed up and it's the end of the world, or I'm really mad at you. It's here's the impact of what you've done. And I know that's not what you're trying to achieve. So we understand it together. Important that it's timely as well. So it's funny to have both preparation and timeliness, because I do think it's important to think about how you structure a conversation that you know is going to be a tricky one. But you also don't want to leave it for too long, because if you do, then it will come out of the blue for people. They won't remember any specifics anymore. And you've kind of missed your chance often as well. So if it's something that is relatively minor, small and in the moment, and not making a big deal is better. If it's something where it might uncover a few deeper things or could be quite upsetting for that person to hear, important to treat them with kindness and go, well, is this something for, when we can be in a private space, or when I know what's going on for you for the rest of the day, and this isn't going to derail the work that we need to do. So think about, where is that person going to be able to better appreciate the feedback rather than it feeling like an attack. And Active listening we've got as a technique in there. And so the main thing that I mean by that is let it be a two-way conversation. So when you've said whatever it is that you need to in this beautiful radical can-do way, give the person a chance to respond, ask questions, understand what it is that you mean. And by turning it into a conversation, not just a here is a piece of feedback I need to give you, one, you give them the chance to actually understand what you mean a whole lot better. And if you've messed up a little bit in the care personally or the challenge directly, you get a chance to rectify that. So you check their understanding, you know that they're on the same page as you, and you can actually wrap up that conversation a bit better. It's also important to practice having these conversations often. So when we're in an environment or in a culture where we don't share feedback and insights, it makes it really hard to do that. So starting small, starting often, seeking feedback, inviting feedback, asking people if they have something, and if you start with specific things, people will find it easier and then go to more general. Do you have any feedback on how I'm doing in my role, or how the relationship is going with this partner or this stakeholder? That becomes easier. But if you start with, I don't know if that landed how I wanted it to in that meeting. Do you have any feedback for me? That's really tangible and specific and easier for people to start with. Once you do that, you start to build that culture where people get good at telling each other what they need to know. No. So we'll move now into the handling difficult responses, which I know is a real challenge for lots of people, and it's often the reason that we avoid these conversations as well. So we get worried about people being defensive and the emotions that might come with some of these conversations. And I think because we all work in a really purpose-driven environment, we the emotion that comes with it is kind of normal. People are working in a space where they truly care, where they've got some skin in the game. It's probably tied up with their identity as well. So emotions are kind of natural. It's also how we get such amazing work out of volunteer communities, out of the people that we have, because everyone is really purpose driven. But I do understand that it can make that courageous conversation piece a bit more challenging. So my advice to you on this, to start with, is stay calm and composed. It's okay if people get emotional or upset. That's okay. Stay calm, respectful. Try really hard not to react emotionally yourself. You don't want to escalate that situation, but you do want to acknowledge their feelings and sort of make it okay that you understand where they're coming from and why something might not have been what they wanted to hear. And then focus back on that message. You truly care about them and you want them to succeed. So here is the thing that they need to know. And you might be able to layer on like, well, I can help you. Here are the ways that I can help you with that. Or here's who I think could help you with this. So just keeping that tone calm and not being afraid of the emotion, not just ignoring it, like acknowledging it, and then reiterating that message. So again, we've still got to keep that challenge directly piece in there. We can't just go all love, all aroha. Giving people a bit of time to express their own thoughts. That's that active listening piece coming in again. That also helps us to diffuse the tension, and it stops it from being that obnoxious aggression. I'm telling you all of this information and not really giving you a chance to be part of the conversation. If you can turn it into that conversation, you get much more of the back and forth. also can be important to clarify your intentions in giving this feedback or having this conversation. So what is the big picture goal? And hopefully, most of the time, you're actually aligned if you zoom out far enough. There's just something that's in the way, or a different approach, or something that's not landing, and there's a disconnect that's not so helpful. So find that common ground and clarify your intention in having this conversation, is so that you can support them to get there to where they want to be. And then also, I think focusing on solutions, not blame. So you did X wrong and it went terribly, and this is the outcome, and that competition didn't go well because of what you did. Not so helpful, makes people really defensive straight away, and feels like a bit of a personal attack. What we really want is a conversation around, okay, so that didn't really work. What are maybe some of the things that we'll learn for next time, and we will make sure that we don't do again? How do we put that in place? Again, that's more of a two-way conversation. Important to get across that the outcome that we had when that competition fell over and it all went terribly is not okay, and we can't have that again. But what is it that we will fix? And what are the changes for this individual person to make? But keeping that future focused makes it a whole lot safer for people to engage in the conversation and to use it as a growth opportunity. I've got a little bit in here as well on how to be a good receiver of feedback, because I think it's all well and good us thinking about the things that we know that we need to tell everyone else, but we really need to hold the mirror up and think about how do we respond to feedback. And when you role model this well, you also, again, build that culture where people can give feedback to each other and it feels safe. So whether you're a leader, whether you're not, really important to also practice what you preach and seek feedback and practice your own responses to it. So I've included here a slide on the 5 R's of feedback. So first of all is that request, that's that taking the initiative. You don't have to make it a big deal, but asking, hey, how do you think that went? How do you think I managed that? Is there anything that I could have done differently? That can be really helpful. When you receive it, again, actually listen to it. Don't jump straight into the excuses or reasons why you did something. Just take a moment to sit and listen before you react. Ask questions, understand it a bit better. It doesn't, feedback doesn't have to be one line. If you can go, oh, can you tell me a bit more about why you think that? Or just seek to make that feedback a bit richer so that you can take it away and do the next step, which is to reflect on it. And so don't judge the person who's given this. Don't judge yourself at this point. Let it kind of sit, consider where that's come from, because the person who's providing feedback or having this courageous conversation themselves, they'll have their own perspective and lens and goals and motivations in having the conversation. So there might be some bits of it where you go, understand where you're coming from. That's something that I choose not to use or change, but it's useful to know that that is how this person feels. But also pick the things where you go, actually, that's really helpful. I had no idea that I was coming across in that way, that I am the only person who holds the whiteboard pen in meetings and it doesn't give anyone else a chance. Giving some time to think about those events and reflect on them. Responding and closing the loop. So if someone has been brave and had that courageous conversation with you, it's a really good idea to thank them. So if you're all sitting here in this webinar probably going, I know these things are hard. That person who might have said the uncomfortable thing to you is probably feeling the exact same. And so if you can thank them for that feedback, or even take it a step further and go, the way that you gave that either really worked for me or didn't, and give some feedback on that. Again, we're helping to build that culture where it's normal to challenge each other and to provide sort of caring, kind insights that are going to get us where we need to be. And then the last thing is to resolve. So if you learned something in that feedback, make the changes. And sometimes sharing that plan with either the person who provided that feedback or maybe your leader or colleagues, whoever, will be really helpful. So that takes me to the end of the slides that I had in here. I hope that the radical candle model is sitting well with you. I find it a really, really useful one for, like I say, all manner of conversations, whether it's performance related, whether it's behavior or outcome related. I think it's really, really useful. And I hope that it's something that will stick with you. I pull it out all the time to help both myself and leaders that I work with who are needing to communicate something challenging. So we've got a bit of time left as well. So any questions? I'm happy for people to jump in or pop something in the chat if that's easier. The chat that I definitely can't see. So if anyone is Matthew, you'll have to tell me. Or anything you'd like me to elaborate on more. I'm hoping that if there's no questions, it means whatever that situation was that you were coming up with, you feel much more confident to have that conversation.
And we do have a question in the chat now, Claire. How do you use this approach when the overall outcomes or the intentions between you are mismatched?
Yeah, great question. So I think that is where you need to work on that relationship. So the intentions and outcomes might be mismatched, but do you understand where they're coming from and where the overlap is for what you're doing, and where are the pieces, I guess, where is the directive, where is the what do we actually have to do, rather than just the approach. And I think also seeking to understand and have that conversation. We go, well, here's the piece that I'm really trying to get in here. Understand that that's not what you're trying to do. But hopefully, again, if we zoom out far enough, there's something where we're connected. Can we find that point through through a safe relationship where we're working through these things together? And once you're there, you can also share a bit of what you're trying to achieve. So really tricky. But I think if you can also pull it back to, is there a strategy that we're working towards? Whose organization aims are we trying to achieve? And can you pull it back to that as well? And again, dial up that care personally, along with well, I'm challenging based on whatever set of outcomes it is, and where are those linkages or crossover in shared goals and outcomes. Hopefully that's helpful. Anything else?
There's no further questions popping up in the chat. Just like to take this opportunity to thank you, Claire. I thought it was thought-provoking and informative, and one of the things that I'm going to take away from this is if as the person delivering the message, you do it in a compassionate and sensitive way, you'll probably feel enriched as well. And I think so. There's some joy for both people in the conversation that can be had. So I really appreciate that. So thank you, Claire. Much appreciated. We we'll edit this video webinar at some point and stick it up on the website along with Claire's presentation. I will also send out a quick survey to everybody post this webinar. If you could fill in the and answer it, that'd be fabulous. I'm really keen to know what else you would like to hear on these webinars. What subject matter topics that are of interest that you would like to